Welcome to Film Dorks Podcast. There we are.
Here we are.
Film Dorks Podcast number 10. This is number 10, and this is our first live stream. Oh, yeah. Which we are hoping to get down properly. You're going to have to bear with us on a few technical glitches through this one.
There'll be a few bumps in the road.
There'll be a few bumps in the road, but this is
likely for the entire duration of this entire show.
Podcast. Yeah, that's
every episode.
Most likely. Yeah, for the next 3 years. But we'll get it down by then. But yeah, we're hoping to kind of do this live stream thing on the regular because it's fun and it's interesting, and we're all stuck inside still after 7 billion years. I feel like when we were allowed to go to like concerts in a restaurant, that the dinosaurs were still walking the earth. That's what it feels like at this point during this whole thing.
This whole thing has just reaffirmed I've become like an old man. I don't want to leave my house anymore, and I'm fine. This is good. I'm good. This is fine.
Right. Yeah. It is getting to the point where it's just starting to feel kind of like normal, and I don't know how good that is.
You know what we can do though? We can watch movies.
Yeah, and you can watch Film Dorks live stream podcasts. What else you got to fucking do?
What else we have is also like Shudder and all these incredible
there are some
Netflix
Shudder's
and
amazing
Hulu
and
El Rey.
El Rey Network. Rodriguez, our man, our boy.
He's our boy.
Yeah, he's our boy. Not really, but
sure,
we love him. I learned more from him in college than I did from all of my professors combined, for sure, based off of his book Rebel Without a Crew and all of his 10-minute film schools on his DVDs. But that's not what we're fucking
We'll do a podcast on
today.
that for sure at some point.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, Rodriguez podcast.
Yeah.
I think that's a good idea. So, but today we are doing episode number 2 of our horror series.
Oh, 2 of horror series. Yeah.
Of our horror series. This is the 10th Film Dorks podcast and about the 220th podcast if you go back to the film dumpster days.
Yeah. But, we'll load those up online sometime soon as well.
Yeah, no, it's going to be a bear of a job. So
we're working on that. We'll get a backlog going. But this is episode 2 of our horror cast. And we are going to do a deep dive into the golden age of the slasher film, which excites the shit out of me because it's one of my favorite subgenres of horror, subgenres of cinema. Period. But
I'm gonna be your. I love horror. Obviously, I got my Evil Dead guys behind me here. I got my bobblehead and
I see it. I see the lunchbox.
Wait,
I got some other.
Let's go back.
I got some Ash guys over here as well. Evil Ash. That said, slasher films are not my favorite genre of horror.
You know what?
I love them.
You just be quiet.
But I'm here for counterpoint, so that's my job here today.
Oh, Mr. Counterpoint. Great.
No, I love
to fucking deal with your goddamn attitude. And
I'll get into it later, but
you're seriously losing, by the way, and you're going to have to figure something out.
All right.
Both of you, actually, but you can't really see it so much.
What, the hair?
Lucas. Yeah.
Oh, from behind,
you're like,
behind
him.
That's a balding motherfucker. Yeah.
We're that old.
It's the testosterone.
Yeah, or the lack thereof.
Maybe
I don't know. Anyhow, slasher flicks. So,
before we dive in, are we supposed to do our FMKs from
our FMK from our first episode of our horror series, where we looked at the Universal monsters, and we particularly looked at Dracula, Frankenstein, and the Wolfman. So we did a little who would you fuck, marry, kill?
Should we start with the Facebook comments or the Twitter comments?
What have people said?
Yeah, let's see what other people said, and then we'll throw ours in quick, and then we'll get into it.
So we have Cameron, who said, I feel like I chose F for Wolfman. He'd be the one doing the fucking. And I could see that. I could see Wolfman just going to town on somebody in his Wolfman state.
I agree. He's probably the rapiest of the three.
He'd be a wild lay.
Yeah. If things all get hairy.
We have Toronto, who says, with you and all that, Frank will be home protector as well as a smoke detector. So that's a plus, I guess. And she has a point because fire's bad.
Yeah.
So not only would, if anybody broke in, they'd get destroyed by Frankenstein, but like if they came in with fire or even the whiff of smoke, he'd let you know. And she says, Dracula, well, good, solid, and healthy choices. And then Brooke says she can make an argument that Dracula is more of the long-term relationship type.
I mean, long-term.
Yeah.
Yeah, real long
like
term.
forever. And Wolfman is a one-night stand, and honestly, Frankenstein seems like he just break things and step on cats. So,
Yeah.
I think she has some points.
I mean, you might be good if you don't have any cats.
Yeah.
Or pets in general. Small pets.
Well, we're going to jump over to our Twitter.
Yeah.
And,
what are the Twitter peeps
JW
have to
Boys,
say about
who's a buddy of mine in Seattle, that's his handle. He said, Dracula is the best lover. And I kind of think he's right if you look at the
true.
if you look at like the history of his films. I mean, come on. He's the sexiest of them all.
I mean, either way, he's seducing you. There's no
Definitely
doubt about
seducing, yeah.
Yeah.
And then Tortuga, our own Kevin Edward, says, and I have to admit, as much as I don't want to admit this, he kind of nailed everything I would have said. He said, Frankenstein simply to hear the crazy, intense moans and other freaky half words. He'd marry Dracula. He'd get to live forever, and Wolfman's a little too hairy for him.
Kill him.
Oh, yeah. Kevin's a twink guy all the way.
Yeah, he's a total twink. Yeah, he likes them hairless and pretty.
Well, but I had a similar take. My whole thing was, of course you're going to want to F Frankenstein because he's got like dead guy dick. So he's got like, it's like Viagra. You could just go all
like
night.
Or is it? Maybe it doesn't fucking work.
So you're right. We'd have to like see what we're working with before we agree. But for me, that makes sense. And also the moans, like less talking, more moaning. I'm into that. And then there's also the, you're going to marry anybody. Dracula's got a castle, and he's got those crazy cool goth chicks that hang out there all the time.
You've never seen daylight again, though.
Yeah, shit, you're starting to turn me. You're turning me a little on that one.
No,
and then happy marriage, though, you gotta.
So you're killing the Wolfman too, though, right?
Yeah, but this is why. He's gonna shit all over your carpet. He might even kill your dog, and it's not even about that. Like, he might even be a fun time. It's then the rest of the time he's going to be like back to a human, like, oh, I'm so sorry, I did. You have to deal with all that. It's like being married to a drunk.
Yeah,
it's being married to a drunk. I don't want to deal with that.
Being married to someone who's incredibly bipolar once a month.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with it.
My wife, right?
My wife. Take my wife.
So for me, my take was this. Although I like your Mary idea, now I'm kind of, I'm gonna fuck Dracula because he is just gonna give it to you. It's gonna be hot. He's got those sexy fucking eyes.
See, I get it.
But
I want that forever. But okay.
Here's the reason I would marry Frankenstein. Because that guy has a heart of gold. I mean, do you see him with that little girl and the flower?
So true.
He's a sweetheart.
With Gene Hackman.
He
is the married type. Dracula, you're right. Dracula would cheat on you left and right, and you'd have like another.
He would fuck everything he saw.
Before you know it, you're the goth chick in the basement.
You're going to have HIV.
Yeah, you're right.
So if he doesn't turn you, you're going to die way sooner.
This is a lot harder than I thought it was gonna be.
He's too hairy, gross, ew. Like, can you imagine the dingleberries in that guy?
Poor Wolfie. Yeah, I can imagine. I own a Pyrenees, so I can definitely imagine.
It'd be like fucking your dog.
Hey, he's a sweetheart. He's my boy.
How about you there, Jeffrey? What would you do?
Well, you guys have some pretty compelling arguments here because I was originally going kill Dracula because he most likely would kill you in your sleep or turn you, which may or no, he'd kill you though. Again, Wolfie would be a hell of a lay, and Frankenstein again. He's the kind of person who's going to stay home and cook you dinner. I think, but I think Dracula would probably seduce the hell out of me, so I'd end up marrying him. I'm sure.
I think all of us would end up just doing whatever Dracula wanted.
And then he'd cheat on us, and in a fit of jealous rage, we'd kill him. So we're going to fuck, marry, kill Dracula. That's it. The other guys, they're ugly anyways. So there's that.
All right.
We have another FMK out for this cast. We ask you to jump on there. Give us some feedback. Let's know. We want to know who you.
Should we cut to the FMK real quick so they can see what we're talking about? Okay, let me
FMK and respond to this one.
I gotta pull it up.
And Twitter and shit.
It takes me a second, guys. I'm not fast at this.
Screen radar.
This is the FMK.
Screen radar.
This is the FMK. So let us know what you think. I'm actually pulling up the chat room right now.
Okay, so it's the FMK for Freddy, Jason, and Michael Myers. So let's see what you guys have to say about that. We'll share it on another horror cast.
Kevin's supposed to be up on the chat right now, answering questions. Is he able to make that happen?
I don't know. I don't know. It's Kevin.
Let's assume not.
Right. Well, anyway, Kevin's going to get back to us with it. So, but in the meantime, Nick, why don't you take it away with the slashers? I'm going to leave you on.
When we're
POV
talking about the slasher subgenre, it's this is something that we can say the golden age of it, where they really took off, was between 1978 and 1989. That's the golden age of the slasher years. There's a lot that came out then, but that's not to say that there wasn't stuff before and precursors to and slasher films that kind of helped move it into certainly a subgenre. Things like you could say Psycho
for sure,
but it's really not a slasher film, or it's a slasher / like psychological horror.
No, but some of the filmmaking elements that we see, in the slasher films were taken directly from Hitchcock. So,
agreed, and certainly with the one I'm talking about, John Carpenter takes a lot from him. But it wasn't until like the mid 70s that slasher films started really popping up with things like Black Christmas, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Some of these movies, Bay of Blood. So there were some, but they weren't nearly as successful. They were low budget. They were of the slasher genre, but it wasn't until 1978 when John Carpenter released the first Halloween movie, and it was shot for $300,000 in 20 days. Super low budget. Half of the budget went to Panavision cameras, development and stuff like that. So half their budget went to cameras so they could make it look like a bigger budget film. The other half went to next to nothing. I mean, they were living in there's one trailer for makeup, wardrobe, hair, everything.
Well, they all supplied their own wardrobe. The cast. They didn't even have a wardrobe.
Right, but they did have wardrobe because they couldn't go home with their fucking wardrobe. That's not how it works. You know that.
But my point, though, is as far as cost is concerned,
yeah. I mean, they cut costs like crazy, But basically, and this Halloween was not even John Carpenter's idea. Halloween was the idea of the financer, I believe, and he wanted him to make he wanted to make kind of an exploitation slasher flick, and he pitched the idea of a group of babysitters stalked by a killer. That's what he gave to him, and that idea in John Carpenter's head, we got what we got. And I think the reason this is probably the most important slasher film of all time is you could argue it's the best one, artistically speaking. Like his Steadicam work in there, which was a glide cam at the time, it wasn't even the type of Steadicam rigs we have now. And he did so many long takes. There's particularly one long take where Michael is kind of stalking outside the house, and he comes up to the house and he goes around and he looks in the window, and then he comes back and no, it's not Michael Myers. I'm sorry, it's Tommy. It's that opening shot with the little boy, and you're seeing through his eyes. He goes up the stairs. He fucking picks up the mask, puts it on, and then they did a little optical effect for the eyes, and
I'll tell you what, Nick, why don't we watch a little trailer action so people can see exactly
let's throw this trailer up, and then we can get back into it.
Halloween night. A small American town. 15 years ago. Michael?
Okay.
Yeah, that's
so there it is.
that's
I
it
got- I
holds
got a
up so
couple-
well.
Just
It's a
really
really,
quick.
it's still, the trailer alone still holds up really well. I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah.
Well, I also
it's incredible.
edited it a little bit.
That's okay. Good job. Well, you
Yeah.
made a great trailer. Just to jump back real quick, and then we'll get right into it.
Yeah.
A couple people did respond to us when we said we would, in the terms of the fuck, marry, kill with these three, with Jason, Freddie,
okay.
and Michael.
Let's give him a shout out.
And Angel says Michael's dedicated. She'd marry him. Jason, she'd kill. But good luck with that.
Yeah, no, that's not going to happen.
But everybody was pretty much kind of in agreement that they would kill Jason because he's a mama's boy.
Honestly,
Which
he'd
is
be
funny as
horrible
fuck.
to have around. Yeah.
Props to that one.
Well, they all have obsessive compulsive issues, so I think that's going to be an issue in any relationship.
Yeah.
You know what?
for sure.
Freddie will be fun, and honestly, we'll get into that later. Like,
Yeah.
it might
We'll
be a
come back.
horrible
I just want to give those
relationship.
shout outs. Everybody, go on, find this FMK and give us.
Yeah,
give us
post
the
your
stuff.
comments on there.
We'll have
read it.
we'll have a discussion on the next round. But when you look at that trailer, they even show the shot of them taking the mask off of him. That's all. Actually, it's technically 2 takes. There's a cut in there. But that was completely inspired by Orson Welles' Touch of Evil.
Oh, nice.
That opening shot, he talks about that. But he really wanted to, the one thing that's really kind of makes Halloween shine, especially the first 2, and certainly the first one for the most part, 'cause it's the only one John Carpenter directed, is the fact that the framing and the lighting, is fucking incredible in that film, and he was really on the adage of don't show the killer and keep him in the dark, and that's why we see a lot of older shoulder shots or him kind of in shadow, tons of just dripping in shadow, and then when you see kills, they're not gory. He doesn't go for the gore.
He didn't want that. He was very explicit about that. He didn't want any really.
Yeah, I think that's what people like modern audiences who maybe haven't seen the originals don't totally understand is that first Halloween was just mood and it was expert filmmaking with suspense. The gore wasn't really there. We'll get into when
Very
gore
little.
kind of makes its appearance, but Halloween is
certainly
not.
plenty. We'll move into that, but
Yeah.
Halloween and the Halloween movies in general, although as they went on, they did get a little gorier. They were a little more graphic, not so much gory, but a little more graphic. But the first one, not that graphic at all. Most of the kills you don't see at all. You don't, and it's just really moody framing and moody camera movement and slow, just like building of suspense. But
going back to your budget too. That's how much of a cost factor is that when you're not showing blood, you're not showing prosthetics, and
you're saving money.
Yeah.
They put that into lighting. Dean Cundey DP'd this.
He was the DP on Back to the Future.
Yes, he went on to do Back to the Future and like Jurassic Park and fucking a ton of other huge movies. But between him and Carpenter, they created a phenomenon. This movie grossed, I can't remember what they said worldwide.
You want me to check real quick?
I think it was over 70 million or something like that at that time.
39 million on a budget of
worldwide though.
No, that was
worldwide.
Not,
it was 70.
It was older stuff. Yeah.
I think it was 70 million worldwide, which equates to about $250 million today on a movie that was made for $300,000 at a time when they didn't spend nearly the amount of money they do marketing, especially something like this. The thing that I think really, obviously, besides having one of the most brilliant probably the most brilliant genre director of all time. I think Carpenter is an absolute
It'd be hard to argue
master.
other than Danny Boyle, who I think can jump genres and still do really, effective Hollywood films. I that's it. That's all I got for anybody who's maybe near the caliber of Carpenter.
Yeah, no, he was a genius. And then he had a genius DP. And he was actually, got to give credit to the execs on this. I mean, he was given the idea, which wasn't much. He turned it into something far more interesting than the concept. But this title was not John Carpenter's. This was also given by the executives. And he thought it was a brilliant idea. Nobody had really.
What was it originally?
Did
you say what it was?
No, I didn't.
I'll
see
tell you what it was. It
I-
was called The Babysitter Murders, is what
That's
the
right.
original title was. Which talk about respecting
a huge difference.
yeah, but also respecting what what sells in a market. And that's the thing where studios get blasted all the time, like, oh, our tour director and their vision. But let's be real, like, Hollywood is the marriage of art and commerce. And
Right.
The Babysitter Murders, sounds like a fun, like, Nancy Drew,
Yeah,
novel to
and or
read.
just some
But
other
Halloween,
random
I'm going to
slasher
the
film.
fucking theater and I'm watching
Right.
Halloween. You know
well,
what I mean?
Well, nobody had used it in a title before.
Yeah.
And it wasn't as big of a holiday back then as it is now, but this movie made it bigger.
Right.
And between all of that, they had a monster hit on their hands. The cast was phenomenal. Jamie Lee Curtis was not the first choice. Neither was Donald Pleasance. Both Christopher Lee and who was the other Biggie Hammer guy back then? Christopher Lee and Peter Cushing were offered the role of Loomis, of Sam Loomis, and they turned it down. They said no way. And then they got Donald Pleasance. Thank God, because he's incredible in this entire series. He gets so much more interesting as the movies go on. He actually makes the other films that he's in.
He's not even in it as much as you remember. Like rewatching it for the millionth time, I was like, it's almost like, he gets like 10 minutes of screen time or something. It's crazy, but you just
a little more than that.
Yeah, but you remember him being such a huge
A
presence
huge
in the
presence.
film, and he's just not in it as much as you.
And
you
Jamie Lee
He could have
Curtis-
been. I mean, his character really in another film could have been the star of the film.
it for sure.
Right. Yeah.
I can understand why
Jamie-
these other actors though were reticent to say yes, because I'm sure if you read the script of Halloween
Yeah, it's
in the
just
hands
like
of a different
somebody hacking
director,
people up.
it would have been nothing. You're like, so it's just like this girl who's looking after somebody, a slasher comes, and that's it. Like the story, there's not much story there, but it's so basic that in the hands of John Carpenter, he just kills it. It's really kills it.
He started this he took from some things that were made, but he made this subgenre, to be honest.
Well, watching this in Black Christmas
is
is interesting because of that, because Black Christmas is almost the same thing, but and which I recommend if anybody's a fan of Halloween, they never saw Black Christmas, go back and watch it. But there's a reason why Halloween is the one that I think gets more attention still to this day.
Well, Halloween really brings home the staples of specific tropes in these films. Some of them done completely accidentally, but like the trope of who dies in a film. If you do drugs and you drink, you die. If you have sex, you die. It's like almost like a moral idea that wasn't in Carpenter's head at all. It just kind of happened that way, and that became a trope in all these films. If you watch them, if you aren't pure. And Jamie Lee Curtis is pure. And I think what that kind of says is like, she's not distracted by these other things that are outside of her. So she's hyper-focused, and that's why she sees Michael. And that's why she's able to get away from Michael, because of, her keen sense of focus and her pure heart.
That article I sent you, Nick, which is, I can bring up actually in a second, is really interesting. A historical approach to the slasher film. They go into that, and it's funny because, what you're talking about, on repeated viewings, you're like, and actually Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who made the film, even said like, we never intended it to be like the promiscuous girls get killed. That was never what they wanted to say with the film, but you had to project that onto the era. So like, as the slasher film started picking up steam, the morality that was going on during the Reagan era just really took over. And,
it's same with Night of the Living Dead, with as far as how African American character.
Yeah,
it was not intentional. He just was happened to be black. So that interesting that it was projected onto the film.
But yeah, if anybody's interested in reading more on that kind of like, what's it called, the film criticism behind it.
It's academic. It's
academic, and you
article.
should definitely look up that a historical approach to the slasher film by Sotiris Petrides. Is really it's a really cool deep dive into the slasher genre. So definitely check that out.
We'll tweet it or post it or something, so they can go to @Screenwriter on Twitter, and they can go to Screenwriter on Facebook, and please go to our YouTube channel, sign up there, subscribe to our stuff. We like you. Okay, shameless plug over. So yeah, and Jamie Lee Curtis is incredible in this film. She also wasn't the first choice, but they're interestingly, she's the perfect choice. One, because she's phenomenal in this role. She's just great. She's super adorable. She does an incredible job with this part.
And she really
comes
sells,
from. Right, she does sell it. She
sells
it
naturally how someone would react in that scenario, which is what really works.
Yeah, she's incredible in the role. Her and Pleasance just add a whole nother layer of just amazing professionalism to this film. But interesting, she wasn't the first choice. However, he was more than happy to have her when the first choice turned it down. And part of it is because her mother is the mother of being killed by slasher. It's Janet Leigh. And she's stabbed to death in the shower in Psycho. That's Jamie Lee Curtis's mom. And then Jamie Lee Curtis, sorry to spoil that one for you. She goes on to be one of the biggest scream queens in the 80s. Not only does she do 2 Halloween movies, she does Prom Night and she does Terror Train, and she became kind of a staple in the scream scene. So this
Prom Night and Terror Train are like 2 of the copycats that were really, sprung from Halloween being so successful.
Now she's now very regular by eating yogurt.
Oh, excellent. She's fit, and I don't know. I was trying to remember.
She poops a lot.
Yogurt. She poops a lot.
Yeah.
No, but that's
so. Anyhow.
Oh, you go, Nick. You go.
I was just going to say. That sprang this, and then they moved forward. After this, that was 78, and by 1980 there were just nonstop fucking movies coming out, and that's when Halloween 2 came out, was in 1980, and it was a huge success as well.
Wait, so Carpenter did not direct this one, correct?
No, he didn't even want to really do it. He was kind of convinced into writing it. He wrote it with, I believe, Deborah Hill too on this one, and then I forgot the director's name of this one, but someone else directed it.
I'll tell you in 1 second.
He also did the score for it, and then and so the sequel came out, and the sequel, interestingly, it's fun to watch these 2 movies back to back because they do work really well together.
Rick Rosenthal directed, which he also did. Let's look down his. He had a long career, a lot of TV. But let's see, Bad Boys in '83. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, he had a long career, mostly TV.
But he doesn't. I think he does an adequate job. I liked what they did with the script. Like Carpenter said, the only way to do a sequel to this is it just continues. Like, he's not dead. We know he's gone. So
yeah, and that's what's so great about, and I think I talked about this with you, Nick, is Halloween. Like every few Halloweens, I'll just revisit the 2 of them, 1 and 2, and I just watch them as a double feature because they're perfect bookends. And and he's right. Honestly, there's times where I think sequels can be, bigger and better. That's kind of what we're used to seeing, especially nowadays. And we did Terminator series last week.
And they talked about that. Stop.
Yeah, they just and that's the James Cameron approach.
Their own tail.
It's they just blow up bigger, and the fact that all he did was just keep the story going for another round is pretty great. So, anyway, so let's watch the trailer real quick, and then we'll jump in. Ready?
Yeah.
Universal Pictures presents Halloween 2. More of the Night He Came Home.
Who is it?
There was nothing within him, neither conscience nor reason, that wasn't even remotely human.
Janet, go tell Mr. Garrett we're having trouble with the phones.
What's this? It's a Celtic word. It means the Lord of the Dead.
Halloween 2. More of the night he came home.
Yeah, that one's
Okay.
intense.
That's great. It's a little more graphic, but it does really try to do an ample job emulating the first one as enough to feel like, so when you watch them back to get back, they both work. Definitely a slightly bigger budget on this one, but again, not considerably bigger. Huge success, massive success. And then it was just fucking nonstop throughout the 80s with multiple ones a year. And when Halloween would come out, or when what we're going to talk about in a minute, Friday the 13th would come out, they would be number one at the box office opening weekend. These movies were made cheap and made money.
The original Halloween took 1941 off. 1941 replaced it in the theaters. And then it was such a bomb that Halloween came back a couple weeks later.
So Spielberg got kicked out of the theaters. Oh, that makes me happy to hear.
Yeah.
I know, me too.
Yeah.
So yeah, and the second one goes on, and it's a fucking great horror movie, and again, not gory. Again, a little more graphic. Like you see a little more close-ups on some of the stuff, but still, just a really tense kind of edge of your seat sort of stuff. And there's one great, and I just fucking Pleasance just destroys this film. He's so good in it. There's one scene where they're standing outside of the Myers house, and the sheriff guy is with him, the cop's with him, and the cop's smoking a cigarette, and he's like, "You want a cigarette?" And he hands him a cigarette and a lighter, and Doc Loomis doesn't smoke, but he sits and he's so into his fucking, like, he's berating or what, he's just giving it to the guy, he's already starting. Like he starts out these movies a little crazy, and Jesus Christ, he goes so Captain Colonel Kurtz on this shit. Like by the end of this, when he finally disappears from the series, but he just stands there, just going off, just freaking out, evil, and he's holding a cigarette and lighter, and it's a super entertaining moment in the film that's kind of humorous, but at the same time just shows how good Donald Pleasance is. It's one of those my favorite moments from the series.
Well, I found it interesting too where the second one was like a retread of the first, but they did it justice. It was a really good sequel. Yeah. But then the third one, it has no Michael Myers. It's not a slasher film. It's why we can't even include the third one in this series that we're talking about.
So
right
we
now.
are just going to skip over number 3.
But I want to say one thing about it before we move on, which is I think Carpenter and Deborah Hill were ahead of their time, because what they wanted to do was not make Michael Myers just a recurring thing. They wanted Halloween to be a yearly event that would be an anthology of feature films in the theater. It was a great idea. It just didn't land.
I mean, it made money.
but it's
panned critically and audience.
I don't think it made the same money either as 2.
They wanted to see Michael Myers.
Once you've established 2, you can't go back to
and
it.
I don't blame them. I think they had the right idea. They were a little ahead of their time, and it also was the wrong It was the wrong way to do it. Like if they were going to do that, the second one should have. But anyway, people
Season of the Witch.
Yeah,
we're gonna
skip over. Okay,
and I'm just gonna sum up really quickly here because the first 2 are the ones that are just you can watch them over and over again. You can and if you really watch them with a critical eye, like we talk about like reading a film, learning to read cinema as if you were reading a book. And there's just so much amazing shit going on in these 2 movies that the more I watch it, the more excited I get, the more I'm like, Jesus Christ, this dude was like, came from making the movie Dark Star that like was shot on a shoestring budget and just so ridiculous to launching his career, which is astronomical. And we'll be talking about him in our horror series a lot, which is cool. But yeah, so then they went on and did 4 and 5. And this ends the 80s of Halloween. Because I think 4 was 88 and 5 was 89. They did back-to-back years.
They brought back Michael Myers.
They brought back Michael Myers. They brought back Dr. Loomis. Pleasance is in both of these
I feel
films.
like we can watch one more trailer before we cut to the next series. So which one do you want to do, 4 or 5? Because they're both kind of great.
Yeah, they're both a little ridiculous.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Can you do a half and half?
Well, they're both short. All right, let's do 4, and then it's just to see the return of Michael Myers, and if we're
and then we'll
it,
just leave it
okay.
at that, and I'll sum up. I'll make my summation. Judge.
Okay, cool. Oh. Sorry.
Now, Michael Myers has come home. He has returned for one more night of unholy terror.
Michael!
Somebody help me!
He's here to kill that little girl and anybody who gets in his way.
Oh, God!
Who's gonna be next? Halloween.
Yeah, 4 is freaking cool. Like,
listen, don't get me wrong. 4 and 5 are not bad Halloween movies. They're worth watching. Again, and one of the reasons that they're really worth watching, aside from you get to see kills, and see, this is why people love slasher films.
yeah.
And this is what the next series does so well. And what I think really made you just like, it just launched a whole different ridiculous level to this genre and cemented it as like, it was nonstop slasher movies from 1980 to 1989, nonstop. They're probably 10 a year,
81, there was like a dozen alone.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. There's so many every year. Anyhow, this is where Pleasance really starts to dig in his heels into this role, and he goes completely loony. I mean, he's like he's the guy that we see coming up in the Friday the 13th movies, the one that they stop and it's the crazy old guy.
Oh, you'll see him in the trailer in a second.
Kids are doomed. He was that guy starting.
You see, it's that guy's origin.
Because 4 picks up, and now we have the niece of Michael Myers.
And what year did this come out? 4? Can we
1988.
88. Oh wow, so that was late in the 80s. Okay.
Yeah, and she's she's all this scared little creature, and she's being taken care of by this Rachel as her kind of caretaker. And Michael Myers obviously comes back 10 years later, or is what it was. It's 10 years after Halloween, and he's back, and now he's trying to kill this little girl, and Pleasance comes in, and he's just, now he's like fucking crazier than ever and all burnt up now because the end of Halloween 2, like there's no fucking way he could have lived through that, but he does. And
he's just got just a look at
burnt. Yeah, he's got a burn here and his hands all burned. That's it. Which is, he should look like Freddy fucking Krueger.
Maybe, yeah.
But his performance is just so good and so entertaining. Like he really just, you can tell he's like, I mean, this guy, if you've ever seen him in, other movies, he never stops short of bringing everything he has. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it feels like a little bit more than it needs to be, but.
Can we say that he was like the original Nicolas Cage? That no matter what movie you drop him in, you get 100%?
Yeah, I would say, yeah. He's
full
like
Cage?
He's like Nicolas Cage's grandpa. Because the Cage range is a little more extreme. And not always as grounded as Pleasance was. I mean, Pleasance was grounded in this character.
No, you're right.
So it's not like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like he's the only one that fucking can see it, but so, and then the 5th one picks up a year after the end of this one. And spoiler alert, if you're really worried,
Michael Myers is still alive.
Because the little girl at the end of the film attacks her stepmother or whatever, stabs her stepmother. And she kind of, I don't know, whatever. She's too close to Michael. I mean, it's a little silly, her connection with him. And then a year later, now she's in some crazy kid's home, and Michael comes back, and so does Donald Pleasance, and seems as dangerous as Michael at this point. And,
the thing though
Michael
that I
kills
want
a
to
lot
say
of
about
people.
one last thing on Donald Pleasance before we move on to the next one is, he obviously had a good relationship with John Carpenter, because then he ended up starring in Escape from New York.
oh yeah, Carpenter and him were friends. They
Yeah.
loved each other. He was in a couple other movies with Carpenter.
Yeah.
So, but you know, this is the Halloween is the slasher movie that started all slasher movies.
Yeah. started it all.
You know, and really, and it like I said, and that was one thing I was saying, like, you know, the rules the tropes it put up. Another one is the final girl. You know, the final girl, you know, is generally tends to be the more innocent of the group of people that are stalked by a slasher killer, right? Like they're the more pure of heart. They tend to be the ones who get away, especially in the 80s. And that was set up in Halloween, you know, and not necessarily intentionally for those reasons, but you know, that became a huge trope. There's always a final girl, the one that gets away. So there's that. And we see that all these trends continue in the next series. And that's you, Heller.
Yeah, let me ask you, Ellie, do you want to watch the trailer before we dive in, or do you want
They
to
probably
just
should
dive
have done
in?
that before. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna start. And what year? Like, set the stage. So Halloween came out. Do you know what year this one came out?
Was it
1980.
In
So it's
1980.
1980. So it's 2 years after. Is that correct?
Came out the same year as Halloween too.
Okay. All right. Well, let's watch.
Hello? Who's that? Oh, hi. What are you doing out in this mess?
1, 2, 3,
We weren't doing anything. We were just messing with
4, 5, 6,
Must be my imagination.
7,
Can I help you? Hello?
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, Friday the 13th. You may only see it once, but that will be enough. Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept that trailer because they counted to 13, and I was like, that's so
know.
clever.
Yeah.
So I did the whole thing.
So
Yeah, so it came out in 1980. It's directed by Sean Cunningham, who fully admitted he was trying to copy the success of Halloween, which I think he was successful in doing so.
He was totally successful. Absolutely.
What's interesting about this too, it's one of those films that, because Jason has become so iconic with the franchise, people forget the first film isn't about Jason.
No, not at all. The only time we see him is in the lake.
Yeah, and it's for like a second.
Yep.
Which is interesting because it really, it totally, I think just historically people have this people just see it as this typical slasher But it really,
Jason,
yeah, and it wasn't. I think that's really interesting. You really have to go back and watch.
It's kind of like Halloween raped Psycho and made a baby.
Yeah.
Raped and killed and murdered and dismembered Psycho and made a baby. Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's hard to remove the hockey mask from the franchise, but
it is
technically you don't even get the hockey mask in 2.
Yo, yeah, exactly.
What's interesting though, so this came out in 80. I was born in 78, so I didn't really watch this. I didn't watch the first one. I didn't watch the second one. So
you saw the first time when you were 2? What?
No, I didn't see this until I was probably like 8 or 9 years old. But I was never scared of this film. Like I was like,
oh, interesting.
I was a little put off by the murders, but we liked that as kids. It was like salacious and gross.
Well, you're just looking forward to the next murder.
Yeah, of course. It was kind of like a fun car crash to watch, but it's so inventive, like the the jump scares and the kills. It's
that's
like
why series.
This is where you're getting to. Okay, what's the kill going to be like?
Yeah.
Kevin Bacon getting the arrow through the through the throat under the bed. That's what people are looking for at this point.
Right.
That's what kind of this
movie set that.
Set that tone.
That's 100%. Why this is
and actually this movie catapulted the success of this franchise. And any other slasher killer movie that had success after Halloween and Friday the 13th owes this too. And you know who you can thank for that is really Tom Savini.
Yeah.
His special effect work in these movies is fucking awesome. It's gross, but that's part of the thing is how does Jason kill people? How many weapons does he use? How many people does he kill? How gory is it? That's what you're looking for in these films is the cleverness and the inventiveness of the kills and the gore. These are for the most part gory movies.
Yeah, and Tom Savini
tame in some realms, but certainly gory.
What had Tom Savini done prior to this? Was this his first one? Do we know?
Oh, I don't know.
No, I'm not sure. But I mean, as far as special effects goes, this is what launched his career.
By the way, if you go to
well, that's not true. Yes, he did before these. He did Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that was before, right? Yeah, because I remember him saying how his blood that he was working on. Oh, he did Martin, then Dawn of the Dead. But the blood that he was working on, he didn't get right in Dawn of the Dead. And that was always what I thought was interesting about it. It's like super bright red.
Right,
and
then, paint.
And then he
gets it right in these series.
Yeah, exactly.
But he went on to do Day of the Dead too. Like so, he all consistently worked throughout Friday the 13th and with George Romero.
But again, this is the film in which that gore and that blood, which has become synonymous with all slashers. These films. That started.
It was where it came from. It started here. Yeah. There's a lot of clever kills throughout these movies, but the first two and then in the second one, right? Like he doesn't have a hockey mask at all.
Exactly.
But it is Jason. That's when Jason is in the second one.
Right. It's interesting too because it reminded me like your assessment of it being Psycho Halloween. It's kind of what it is, and it reminds me more of outside of the slasher aspect of it. It was that aspect of the twist that it's the mom, and it's
right. That never came back in the series. Like the first one's probably the most clever of all.
Right, but it was more storytelling, if that's the thing in these films. It was slightly more storytelling in this than any others, because it had that aspect of it's there is a history and as opposed to just slasher.
Yeah,
right.
They also had the thing where who was the actual killer, right? Like you were left wondering like who is the killer, right. And that was unfortunately a trope that ends up bleeding into a lot of slashers afterwards, where it's like it's almost like a mystery. It's almost like Agatha Christie. You're like who's the killer, and it's like
it gets a little
often
silly.
It's so distracting and
April Fool's Day I think the most,
which is good. It's worth revisiting.
It held up actually really well.
One.
But I did think that ends up like Terror Train sort of does that a little bit. Like a lot of these later slashers would become like whodunits. So they're almost like the slasher genre mixed with a mystery, and mostly it's just boring. Like you don't really care about.
Yeah, you don't care. Yeah, you generally don't care.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like Halloween or
what was the Valentine one?
Well, Valentine's.
My
Bloody
Valentine.
My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah. Is that the one, or is that a band? No,
Yeah, that was a decent one too. Actually,
decent, but they also play with the whole "who's this slasher" thing, which
right.
No, I'm not going to disparage that approach, but it did seem like it was almost a crutch that a lot of these slashers ended up just falling back on.
I mean, let's face it, a lot of them weren't as good as some of the series we're talking about that set the tone and set the pace and set the bar. We're talking about the ones that set the bar. And it's not to say that all of them are great.
But then how much money did this one make? Like the first Friday the 13th?
This one's 39 million, budget of 550,000.
Yeah, I mean, just think of those returns. Just think of those returns.
And this series got more popular, especially throughout the 80s, like especially when Jason got his hockey mask.
Right.
He became such an iconic image.
It became marketable, is what it did.
Yeah, super marketable, and they made a ton of money off of them. And
check
it isn't until
a little
while into the third one that he gets the hockey mask. But
they made 21 million for the second one off of $1 million budget. So I think, I don't even know if it did as well as the first one, but it's still like it made 20 times its budget. I mean, that's
right.
You're doing all right.
But they got better. They had a higher box office return after 3. So because
that was the point I was going to make with me being a kid when these came out, is that Jason and the Hockey Mask is how I knew this series. Like that's what my like image of it, because I must have came in on like 3 or 4 or something. And so going back and watching the first one when I was younger was like a trip, because it was not, it was not the movie you thought it was going to be.
Right.
And I think in some ways I didn't respect it when I was a kid, because there was no Jason in a hockey mask, and that's all I wanted to see was him killing everybody. And now, especially as you get older, you're like, yeah, the first one's kind of the best one. Similar to Halloween, like there's great in the whole serise, but the first ones there's a reason they became franchises, is because they did a phenomenal job on the first ones.
Well, going back to this idea of the Friday the 13th was supposed to be an anthology series as well.
Oh, they wanted to not have. Oh, that's cool. I never heard this.
I guess
it was supposed to be. Yeah.
It was too popular. It made too much money. Same with Halloween. The executives aren't going to run away. They're not going to take your new, fresh idea just because you made a hot movie and let you institute that. They're like, oh no, there's money to be made off of this idea. And they did that with Friday the 13th. And part 3, that's where they got smart. They're like, let's find an iconic image like the Halloween mask. Oh, right. Hockey mask.
Well, that being said, I think we should watch the trailer just so people can.
Yeah, let's watch the trailer. It's also this movie is also in 3D, and I saw the theaters in 3D.
Oh, by the way,
there's a couple really corny shots in the film like that don't work.
Watching this on a TV at home, not in 3D, is how I first saw this movie.
I saw it at home. I'm
not a fan,
because it came with those old school blue and red 3D glasses.
They released the cut.
If you can still find that,
I would
DVD
love to watch that cut.
But like the 3D is terrible.
But they have a lot of like pitchforks like staying in the screen. Anyway, all right, let's watch it.
The snake.
Weekends are a good time to escape to the woods. Unless the weekend begins with Friday the 13th. Because 13 is an unlucky number. But out here, so are 1 through 12. Because these are Jason's woods. And nobody leaves them alive. Friday the 13th, Part 3. Jason, you can't fight him. You can't stop him. And now, you can't even keep him on the screen. Friday the 13th, Part 3. When it comes to killing in Jason's woods, Jason will come to you. Friday the 13th, Part 3. A new dimension in terror. It will scare you. Count on it.
Yeah, I mean,
His movie, yeah, it's so good.
I would love to
haven't
see that in the
seen it.
theater. Honestly, I feel like
I know. I was just thinking that, like, if they would
Yeah.
re-release it, like get the tech done on it, redo the 3D with the new 3D technology. I want to see that movie in 3D again.
It'd be fun
I
as
haven't
hell.
seen it. I haven't seen 3 since it was probably on HBO back in
Wow.
the 80s. You
I
when was
just
younger.
watched
So
it.
I left. I'm dying to watch it again now.
I
actually.
watch this one regularly, and there are, like, when you watch it in 2D, and there's a couple 3D tricks that are really cheesy as shit. They're jump scares, and they're just really bad effect. But for the most part, there's a ton of fun kills in this movie. And he gets the iconic hockey mask in this movie.
Right. And the machete, right? Did he have a machete in the second one? I don't.
Yeah, he uses a machete throughout the series at points,
Okay.
but the big thing about Jason is the other ways he kills people.
Right.
Like how you look at the counts of kills, and they get
We
up
did.
into
By
the
the way,
20.
we did have a question
The highest one is 23, I think.
in one
20
film.
in Jason X or Jason,
21.
Yeah, there's 28 kills in Jason's face.
28. Whoa.
Yeah,
Oh,
he
that
said
one's
killed
so bad.
167 people total in the entire franchise.
Seriously, that's
We
ridiculous.
definitely have to have an episode just on kill episode.
Right.
But so we
You
did
said
get a
someone asked you to
question
watch
from Tabs Michaelia. I hope I'm pronouncing your name right. Who asked on horror films, why does the virgin always live? And I think that's an interesting question, and especially since the reason we're doing the golden age of horror is it all takes place during the Reagan era, during AIDS,
Right.
during it was really when
Well,
America did a swing
it was-
conservative after the drug
It was
hippie
set
era.
up in Halloween, like I said. That particular
But
trope was the virginal character always wins, the most pure-hearted, the one who's not distracted by sex, drugs, and rock and roll. And it was accidental.
But I do
it
think
also came at a
it's-
time and
Yes.
period where it fit the time and period.
That was the
and it
morality of the
became
time.
It became a trope, just like the final girl. She's the final girl. She's the best. That's a trope. And if you do
Yeah.
these other things, those are tropes. You die, and you see this so much in Friday.
But
the
it was
13th.
you have to remember though, this was the just say no to drugs. It wasn't like
Right.
drugs
Right.
are a psychological issue that we should probably do through therapy. No, it was like drugs are bad, don't do them. Sex
Yeah,
is bad, don't
yes.
do it. AIDS will kill
Yeah.
you if you have sex. Wear a condom. It was like
Right.
it's
not even wear a condom. It's like no,
you don't
you
even,
just-
abstinence only. Yeah, like
abstinence
Yeah.
only. That's
but
all.
that that
it
was the
really.
era of when these movies were making so much money. But what I kind of love about it is it fucks with the whole you're delivering these morality plays in the most gruesome,
And, yeah, it's
ridiculous
But see, I could
ways
also see it the
possible.
other way in that the people that were screwing, they at least got to screw before they died. So
Oh,
they're letting.
I always felt that. I always
They
felt
always
that.
let the
Or
virgins
at
are
least
being
he
allowed.
was. At least he was totally baked when he died.
Right. Yeah.
He's like
the
he just thought
virgins
he was.
are-
The shit got weird. He thought it got bad, and then he was dead. Like
No,
Well, at least the virgins now get to have the opportunity to screw down the line.
But when we get into later,
right, that's
the
when they
second
start
wave of
changing.
slashers, and then
Yeah.
even what was the name of it? Where there's the
Scream.
Yeah, Scream, where
Scream
it's
movies
like
and,
the deconstructed slashers.
Yeah,
all those things go out the window.
The rise of
rightly
Leslie
so.
Vernon, all that
Yeah.
stuff. Like,
but
so
we'll get into that.
another
That's the
time.
next another podcast. But
That's interesting about this is that Gene Siskel hated Friday the 13th so much that in his review he gave away the ending.
Yeah, and he, you know what?
yeah,
James-
that's why people
and
are going to
Roger
see
Ebert,
it is for the ending.
Actually, when the first Halloween came out, it got bad. It got pretty bad critical press, but it wasn't a wide release. And then when Roger Ebert reviewed it, he loved it. He praised it for
Halloween,
its
the first one.
artistically-
Right.
its inventiveness,
Yeah.
the way that it had such strong sense of female empowerment to it. All these female characters, they were all really
Which is
strong
why
characters.
I still to this day will watch Siskel and Ebert reviews.
Yeah,
I love their reviews. But Siskel is always kind of a dick, and Roger Ebert was always kind of a fan first and critic second.
Yeah,
and that it shows in I think in that.
Well, the thing that you have to know about Roger Ebert is that he wrote Beyond the Valley of the Dolls. That's all you need to know about him.
Yeah, I know, right? Totally. But yeah, getting away from critics, who cares? We certainly don't want to talk about critical reviews of these movies. They're all pretty much universally terrible.
Yeah, and they make more money. They literally, I think, what was the number we read? Is that slasher movies? I think it was like 86 or something. It might have been 84. accounted for 60% of the box office.
Of the box office.
Of every movie out that year.
In the mid 80s.
That's insane. That's how like I never grasped the juggernaut of and think about how low budget
home
they
video
are.
too.
But this is certainly one of those
that was
genres
the advent of home
because
video,
I was, I was, like from 9 to 17, 18 years old throughout this period. So like I just love this shit. You know, I love horror movies. Like I watched some of the movies I loved back then. I'm like, oh my God, this is awful, but I loved it.
Yeah.
I ate this shit up.
I would watch anything, even if it was
I wanted
terrible.
to see these kills. I wanted to see all this crazy gore. And Hal, let me ask you, since we're talking about Friday the 13th, and what was your favorite one of the series that I mean?
Well, again, not going back to my previous comment. I've always gravitated towards films, and I guess they tend to be more tongue in cheek. But a film where a character is not like an Ash from Evil Dead, or any character, even
the first Evil Dead he wasn't.
No, I know. We'll see Evil Dead too. We'll see Evil Dead too. Then moving out of the genre, someone like Sarah Connor, who I like a character that is the protagonist that has to rise up to a challenge and become the hero, as opposed to just surviving.
Yeah.
Where I think any film with a villain becomes the notable character from the film, that means you haven't focused enough on the protagonist. Jamie Lee Curtis being the exception.
But I honestly, the thing that separates these slasher movies from that, the reason we're focusing on the three we're talking about is because they became more popular than any of the other stars. They became the anti-heroes. And like, think of it, when we were kids, what did you dress up for as Halloween? Did you dress up as Jamie Lee Curtis?
Right.
Laurie Strode? No, you dressed up as like Jason or Freddy or, Michael Myers. Like that was...
Yeah, nobody cared about that was part of it. Like there's really no character development. It's all very, like archetypical, tropey character with no real backstory, just a bunch of fucking kids. And, one's a stoner and, one's a token black guy and, one's the virginal girl. And there's one couple, they're the sluts. And, and there's the fucking nerdy kid, but he's got some weird issues that's why he's
asthmatic or something.
Yeah. So he's gonna die. He's asthmatic.
You look at Texas Chainsaw. I wanted half those guys to die anyways.
Yeah.
I love Texas Chainsaw Massacre, but the characters were unlikable by and large.
Well, so all these slashers were happening at the same time, right? And I have this theory that I've always talked about, how like why everybody's getting down on superhero films, and I'm like, just you wait. When you're so burnt out is when the best stuff is going to happen, because it's shit that never would see the light of day. They would never get greenlit. Right. But it's like the well is dry, so they just turn to whatever weird shit is out there. And honestly, that's how we got the next franchise. I swear to God, Nightmare on Elm Street. Wes Craven made Last House on the Left, and he made Hills Have Eyes, two weird fucking movies that are awesome. One's home invasion, one's like mutants in a desert. Great films, not slasher films. But you can tell he was like, okay, what's my next move? So he wrote A Nightmare on Elm Street as a script, and he tried to give it everywhere. He got rejected from everybody. But what's cool is finally the story of Nightmare on Elm Street cannot be told without being like the genesis, the birth of New Line Cinema, and Bob Shaye. And honestly, Bob Shaye is one of, I think, the most influential producers we've ever had. I mean, if you look at New Line's line of work from there, it's like we would not have Lord of the Rings, which is arguably one of the best like franchises or just cinematic achievements we've ever had. And I will back that. But it started with A Nightmare on Elm Street, and the slasher genre was so stale. Like it was already like creaky by the time Nightmare on Elm Street came out, because what was it, 84 or something? Right. Like you could tell it was already starting to run out of steam. And he literally took the whole slasher genre and just like went fucking crazy with it. And I'll say the reason I brought up why those movies didn't scare me, like I really wasn't terrified of Jason or of Michael Myers.
I would say the same thing. Most movies didn't scare me.
But I suffered from debilitating nightmares as a kid. Like it was the thing that like I would wake up in the middle of the night, have to run up to my dad's room, right? And like because I just would suffer terribly from them. And this movie fucked my world up though. But think of it. Watching Nightmare on Elm Street was like, it wasn't that like you could outrun a slasher. You can't escape him.
Before we get into Nightmare on Elm Street, there's a couple things about Friday the 13th.
And we also had two more trailers we could watch if you want.
Well,
What played the trailer to? Well, we don't have. We've
We
watched
don't
two
have.
trailers. That's
We're
enough.
running out of
But
time too.
Part 4. There's what I would say, like my favorite of the series. Like that's
Yeah.
what I was asking you, Heller. What's your favorite? Like, which,
I'll
as
still
you
go.
can remember.
I go back to, because of what I said. I didn't really finish my thought. I go back to 1, simply because
yeah.
it's
of its inventiveness. And,
yeah, exactly.
How
It's
old
not
are you when
about-
you
it's-
first watched these ones? Jeff?
I was
Do you remember?
well, like you. I didn't get into them until they were into the 3rd or 4th one in the series. I was 5 when this came out, so I didn't get them until I was a little older.
Yeah.
So by then it was all about like the kill.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't about the characters or the development of the story or anything like that. So it wasn't until I got older and I went back and watched the first one that I appreciated it for what it was. So
well,
I think
I'll
that's why
say
I like
this.
it more.
Like, I mean, I watched them all, like when they got on VHS. At that point, we're talking about like what 81, 82 years, 1982. I was at the age where I was like sneaking as many horror movies as I could, like trying to get everything. So, but one of my favorite is actually 4.
4. Okay.
4, and there's a couple of reasons, because the main reason I love 4 so much is there's 2, like Kevin Bacon's in the first one, right?
Yeah.
There's
4,
littered throughout
yes.
all
Okay.
these series.
I
There's
totally
all these
know, yeah.
actors that you forget were in these movies.
I know where you're going with
in
this.
this one,
Yeah.
and Crispin Glover.
Crispin Glover's dance scene.
And there's Crispin Glover, when he gets in that, there's that scene where they're like having the party, and he's like the fucking woe is me nerdy dude. And then he finally gets into it, and he's like starting to hook up with this girl, and like he starts dancing, and he does this dance. It's the most fucking ridiculous thing I've ever seen.
Dude, I'm gonna find it right now. Hold on.
If you can find the dance, we'll throw it up at some point. But also, Corey Feldman's in this one. And when he was a child actor, he was really good. He was a very entertaining screen presence. So having these two people who like became very iconic actors, certainly by iconic character actors, and their personalities outside of Hollywood have always been fairly entertaining as well. So yeah, man, I love this one because those two are in it.
Okay, well, well, hold on. You gotta watch this shit. This is for you.
Dance?
This is for you, Nick.
All right, good. I want to see. Let's watch Crispin Glover do the bookie. You got it?
All right.
Yeah, Crispin.
He gets that dance on.
Oh my god.
I don't know. Is it up?
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah.
I mean, he was young in this. This must be one of his first real roles, right?
Yeah, it's amazing, man. He gets that fucking boogie on.
Oh, that's hilarious.
It's really funny. He's really entertaining in the movie. So is Corey Feldman. He's like, the nerdy kid who he makes masks, and
yeah.
And then
you're right.
That iconic scene where he shaves his head.
And he puts all the makeup on, and then
he's trying to.
He becomes Jason.
He's Jason.
Yeah,
and
good.
like Jason gets confused, and
Yeah, you're right. I'd say that one is the one that, especially as a kid, I like resonated with me the most because there was a kid in it.
Yeah, and it was fun.
It was fun.
And there's some really entertaining kills and stuff.
Yeah,
in it.
You're right. I'll give it to you.
One.
I'll say,
5 doesn't count.
3 is the most fun with the 3D.
5 doesn't count.
Ridiculous.
5 is not Jason. It's someone pretending to be Jason.
It's
bullshit. Jason's not dead because Jason lives in number 6.
Yeah,
and then Jason goes to a nightclub in Manhattan and 7.
Right.
So
and kills 28 people. That's fucking. I got to rewatch that one. I remember
28 people
on HBO as a kid and being
21
like,
weapons. That's another thing to count in the series when you're watching it. Count the number of weapons he uses.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's 21 weapons and 28 kill. 21 weapons and like 23 kills or something like that in number 7. Jason exit, but that's in a different time period of slasher. It wasn't in the 80s.
Right.
That fucking movie blows.
Incidentally, I interviewed CJ. I moderated his Q&A at a con. CJ Graham, who played him in 6. I also did Warrington Gillette, who played him in 2. 6 was good. I rewatched it for the interview. And
I actually have some footage of you interviewing him with no audio.
With no audio, yeah. Well, we tried to pull it but we didn't get any.
So wait, no audio?
No, I was like,
No,
you guys rushed this shit over to me right before we were airing, and I'm like sweating bullets trying to pull it in, and I'm like, why can't I get the audio to work?
Yeah. There's nothing he doesn't talk about.
Anyway.
A lot of people played Jason throughout the series, Kane Hodder and all those people. But
there were actually in total there were 60. How many people were there? 13 people played him. 67. 13 people played him in total.
I think there's like 8 people that played Michael Myers in the first film.
Yeah.
Well, this is why
Deborah Hill.
This is the best.
Jim Winburn, who I interviewed as well.
But this is the best segue into the next franchise then, and this is the reason why. And we'll dive in a little more of the reason why. But like all those other 2 characters you described, mask wearing, right? And so when Wes Craven was creating Fred Krueger, one of the reasons why I think this one not only took it to another level with the dreams, like the slasher is not just like lurking around the corner. You can't escape him. He's in your dreams, which is so creepy. So he came up with this idea because he read an article in like published in one of the papers at the time about these Cambodian refugees fleeing the Khmer Rouge, who were like, the kids were having these nightmares and then like ended up where they wouldn't sleep. And then one of the kids actually, like the parents gave him sleeping pills and like, you know, tried to get him to just sleep and get over these fucking like night terrors he was having. And then they've run into his room and he's screaming and he just dies of a heart attack. And it turns out they found a coffee pot like behind his bed. So the kid was like, even though he was supposed to sleep, he couldn't. He was so terrified of his nightmares, they killed him. And that's what like inspired Craven to be like, that's fucking creepy. Maybe there's somebody in his dream that was going after him. And like, and that's where it spooled out, was from a real life story based in trauma.
I didn't know that.
It's totally wild. And then
well, let's show the trailer.
So let's watch the trailer and then we'll dive into it.
So Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm
Street. What
Street.
year did this came out?
This was 84, I believe.
Yeah.
I can double check that in a second. Okay.
The kids of Elm Street don't know it yet, but something is coming to get them.
There's something out there, isn't there?
We just see cuts happening.
What did that, Lieutenant?
I don't know.
Tina! What's the coroner got to say? He's in the jar and puking since he saw it.
They're gonna kill me for sure.
Did you do it?
There was somebody else there.
He was locked in a room with a girl who went in alive and came out in a rubber bag.
No one knows where it came from or who it will visit next.
Nancy? There's something wrong with you. You're imagining things.
Nightmare on Elm Street.
Do you believe in the boogeyman?
No.
Whatever you do, don't fall asleep.
No! No!
Help me,
From Wes Craven, director of The Hills Have Eyes and Last House on the Left, a new masterpiece in fantasy terror, Nightmare on Elm Street.
That movie terrified the hell out of me. I mean, I must have been 9 or 10 when I saw it, and you know, I already suffered from nightmares, so that one just like did me in. But it also meant I was obsessed with it. So like, and I remember I think watching this. I can't. I think I remember watching it, and I'd only watched like half of it because I had to like keep closing my eyes, and that was not like me. I was one of those kids that was like didn't really get scared of things like that, and it just did me in. But so this one was, you know. Robert Englund wasn't the first choice for Freddy. They actually tried to get like a big, bulky guy, whatever. But because he wrote him as like a child killer, it was supposed to be child molester, and they were like, there's all these child molestation cases going on in California at the time, and they were like, we'll just soften it. We'll make him a child killer.
Right.
But no, but so Robert Englund, when he got casted for it, he was like, he showed up with like greasy hair and just made himself like into like a total like scumbag, and he played the role.
I gotta playing devil's advocate here.
Right.
I don't see how he could portray himself any other way.
True, I agree.
It's not a pretty.
He kind of looks.
He's probably the nicest guy in the world, but
yeah,
he's kind of creepy, scary, like odd looking. You know, he leans into his looks. Let's put it that way.
But what Wes Craven was looking for was like, you know, he was like, I want to have a mask on my character because that's what all the slashers were doing. But he was like, but he has to be able to emote, and that was the difference between Freddy and a lot of these other characters. Is it was a character, and he interacted with the kids. Right. It wasn't just silent death coming at you. So like that was the Burns. That's where he came up with the whole Burns thing, and then did the whole like, you know, parents killed him and set him on fire. Came up with the whole backstory. But I think Robert Englund is what separates this slasher. I mean, the dreams and the lead villain separates this from like almost every other slasher. And Freddy's only in like 10 minutes of the first movie, which is insane. It's weird because he's like omnipresent in the whole thing, but his character really only is featured for like 10 minutes of screen time. But I think the reason why this one, is like, in my eyes, this is like the penultimate slasher because it follows so many of the tropes, but it like builds on them and takes them in weird directions. And I think honestly, Wes Craven's one of my favorite horror directors for that reason, is that you never can peg him down.
These movies definitely like take clever to a new level.
Yeah.
He, you know,
well, this also took a slasher film and made, and this is where it kind of intersects with Supernatural.
Yeah,
it's a slasher film, but it's also it's a different genre of horror film because it is a supernatural.
It does straddle, It follows all the rules of the slashers in many ways, but then it does like straddle, you know, like Friday the 13th and Halloween. You know, there's a supernatural element because there is like they keep that you just can't kill them.
You can't kill Jason. Never.
The first one's
totally supernatural. He's a zombie. Jason's a zombie.
But the first Michael Myers and the first other one were like they hinted at the supernatural, but they never got into it. Oh yeah, Jason did become a Deadite, didn't he? No, but
right. That's the rumor.
But you know
confirmed rumor, I guess.
Yeah.
But you know, and one of the difference between this one and the other films is that the lead heroine is not she's not just a victim. She fucking stands up. She literally tackles Freddy. She fucking football tackles Freddy. She does her Home Alone house, which now that I'm older and after watching Home Alone, I'm like, it's like the same shit, just one's a horror movie. You know what I mean? Like she literally has like sledgehammers and things blowing up, and
well, you know, and throughout the series, that's the one thing. Like the first one has I mean, you know, Freddy has some one-liners, but he's not as humorous.
No, and in fact, go back and rewatch it.
He gets.
You can tell like Robert Englund is developing the character as the movies go on. The first one,
right?
You can tell he knows what he's doing. But he's almost like this sniveling little piece of shit who just loves cruelty. And then the second one, we're already jumping forward, but the second one totally kind of blows up the original concept. And Freddy's like, he's fucking like tough. He has like this bass baritone voice, and he's just like whipping ass left and right. He's just like really like aggressive, like physically aggressive, which is not. Then they like resort back to him being. You know, and the follow-ups, he becomes more of just like the jokester. He's like the
that's what I mean. He becomes almost this like sort of it's almost a stand-up show.
Like 3 and 4, he's like a sadistic Batman villain.
Yeah, and which you know because that's what he's becoming this character that Robert Englund created. But but in the second one. They tried to recast him. They didn't want to spend the money, which is because Bob Shaye leveraged everything for that first one, so he didn't really make a lot of money. Like even though it made fucking huge box office, he didn't see any of that. So he's like, okay, and now I have this successful studio that's in the red. What do I do? So he doubled down on Freddy, and him and Wes Craven had kind of a falling out. It was not a falling out. It was just like you know when things are like successful is when a lot of times when the money's flowing is when people get a little pissy. But what ended up happening is they tried to like hire what they did with Michael Myers and Jason. They tried to get a stunt guy to do it, and they shot like a few scenes, and it just was a failure because they're like, "There's no way we need an actual actor," because he did bring a lot of presence. I mean, Robert Englund brought presence and a character to that role where they would have to find somebody who could do it. And this is why I think Nightmare on Elm Street is unique for all this era of slashers, that he created actual character,
personality.
That will never. And they tried.
Michael Myers is called The Shape. He has no personality. Jason has no personality.
Yeah.
You know,
when I was young, I was drawn to these more than the other ones simply because of the
I
personality.
think me too. I think in some ways I was too. Now as it's gone on, I think I appreciate kind of Halloween and Friday the 13th a lot more. Although I love them all. I just love all this murder and mayhem and brutal and boobies and stuff like
the
that.
first one though has some of the most unique kills of any slasher movie. That's the thing, is like Wes Craven, this one he knocked out of the park.
Yeah.
'Cause if you think about the whole Fred is, so you can tell they had that room that spun and they used it in like 3 different scenes. Just to like get an effect, because they were like, okay, we got this room, what can we do? And the whole idea of Johnny Depp getting pulled into that fucking bed and the guts spewing out, like that for me.
Johnny
Depp. that like totally fucked my world up. I mean,
Lucas
the imagery
for the next 6 months.
Yeah, honestly, like that one, and then also with Tina getting rolled across the ceiling.
Yeah,
and that was done really. I mean, they did the same thing in but around the same time with Poltergeist.
Yeah, I mean that's
the
thing is, it's not like they were inventing anything new. I mean, Fred Astaire was dancing on ceilings, decades before, but it was like him using the tools he had to make a low budget horror film look like nothing you've ever seen before.
You're right, exactly.
And that's I think the difference between that one. And I'm not going to knock Friday the 13th. I think they were super inventive with the makeup and effects.
Well, how many Nightmare on Elm Streets did we get in the 80s?
We got up till 5.
4 or 5.
Let me see. I think I went up to
5.
Let me see. I went up to 5 myself. I rewatched all of these. I didn't have to watch 3 because I own it and I used to watch it like all the fucking time because it was my favorite one for a while. But now after revisiting them all again, so let's see, 89. So 5 was 89. I still think that was kind of after the golden era was winding down. Like it's kind of hard for me to even accept that as the golden era still of slashers. But so 2 was crazy for Nightmare on Elm Street because what they did is it's the only one that has a final guy. And it is so much homoerotic subtext. It's fucking hilarious and awesome. Like to rewatch it now, they get rid of the whole dream thing. You got to watch it again. Like the whole story is this kid like struggling with his sexuality. And there's a lot of BDSM and like, trust me, like I remember watching that as a kid and being disappointed because I wanted the dream stuff. And they kind of like, it's only secondary.
That's probably the one I've seen the least out of the first 4 or 5.
Well, Freddy comes into the real world. It's a possession one. And the effects in 2, the creature effects are insane. Like it's some of the best in the whole series are done in 2. So rewatch 2 for sure. Like it's actually way weirder and more interesting than it gets credit for. It's considered like a gay icon film now. But
it's funny you mentioned the effects because I think what stands Nightmare on Elm Street versus the Halloween and Friday the 13th is that Nightmare on Elm Street is very effects heavy. Yeah, and it's crucial to the plot.
Yeah.
Whereas the 13th and Halloween they're not, especially Halloween.
Yeah, they're just the fun kills and stuff. Yeah.
Right. One of our viewers pointed out too that, and I thought it's kind of an interesting thought that although it happened in Halloween and Friday the 13th,
what's that?
The idea of like parents not believing the kids.
Oh no, that was so every Wes Craven film is like a shitty father or a shitty parent, and it's and that's the theme. But it's the theme through all the Nightmare on Elm Streets is like the kids are suffering through this stuff, and the parents won't listen. The parents are neglectful. The parents are drunks. It's like and especially me growing up from like a single kid, parent household. I guess I kind of like felt like this one spoke more to my reality than just living in a camp and having some serial killer come in.
Yeah, because your parents don't give a shit about what you.
Yeah,
have to
it
say.
was real.
You're 13.
Yeah, exactly. It was like
10 or whatever.
Yeah,
like,
growing up as latchkey kids, we didn't.
They don't.
Yeah. We didn't have to deal with serial killers. We had to deal with like shitty parents, and that's the reality of a lot of kids. I mean, that's.
My daughter, I show my daughter's really into horror now. So
that's cool.
Modern ones, especially.
How old is your daughter?
She's 16.
Okay, so she's old enough to watch all this stuff.
Yeah. So we last year we watched Halloween and Friday the 13th, and we watched these 3 actually, and a bunch of other ones I showed her.
How do they translate to her? That's interesting.
Interesting you say that. Like Shining, she loves the shit out of Shining. Like she loves
of course, that's a whole different level of filmmaking.
She liked Halloween. She liked Friday the 13th for obvious reasons. Yeah. She laughed at Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I laughed at it watching it. Did I text you? I was like, how was I ever scared of this?
Yeah, I don't remember ever being that scared of it, but and I just remember really enjoying the series because it got sometimes.
Can I show you the Nightmare 2 trailer? Nightmare on Elm Street 2 trailer?
Please do.
I didn't like that. That was one that I didn't like. But
I didn't like it as a kid.
Dream Warriors was 4.
That's 3. Well, let's watch a couple trailers
fun.
if you'll remember. Ready? Here's 2. 2 is like, it's so worth revisiting from a filmmaking analyst's perspective. Right.
Someone is coming back to Elm Street. He is not friendly. He is not patient.
Kill for me.
And he is not a welcome visitor. But he has something terribly special for the new kid on the block.
It started to happen again. Dad! I'm in trouble. You've had some scary dreams, okay? Help!
Daddy can't help you now.
There's something inside him.
Fight him! You are not afraid of him. He doesn't even exist.
Freddy Krueger is back on Elm Street.
Get out of here, Lisa!
Jesse, fight him!
Watch out for him. He'll be in your neighborhood soon. A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 2.
You are all my children now.
Freddy's Revenge.
Ha 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 ha. It's ridiculous. It starts out with the bus going. Do you remember this? They get on the bus and then it like rides off the cliff and then they're in hell, like balancing. It's the set pieces are incredible. Like I think that some of the best visual effects, even though they get even more like wild later, like they're so basic but also so beautifully done. Anyway, it's worth a revisit, but it's also like I was watching the first one. I was laughing like. Well, in the first one, like Freddy will pop out like behind the thing. It's like a haunted house. He's like, "Here I am!" and then they like, and the girls are running and they're running really slow.
One of the lead guys in this one is so terribly annoying. I don't know. I love 3 though because there's such clever kills in number 3.
Well, 3 was so Wes Craven didn't really have much to do with 2, and then Bob Shaye and him kind of like resolved. They resolved everything, and then came back for 3. And so he wrote the first pass of the script for 3. And dude, it's like, you can tell like it's the evolution of the first one because the second one deviates a lot. It's like, it's not about dreams. It's about, and so then it's like, okay, now where does it go from here? And then the series just continues it. So like 3 was the idea of, it wasn't just one kid who like is in the dream, like Nancy, it was like, and they all have to learn to channel their powers, and she's like and she comes back from the first
dream
one.
powers,
and then the fourth one, and then she kind of passes the mantle over to Patricia Arquette's character, although she's recasted in the 4th one, and then the 5th one is like they stay with that storyline. So then it becomes pretty like sequential after that.
I love 3. I love a couple.
Well, 3 is like a great action movie. It's almost not even
the TV screen kill is fucking awesome.
Is it 3 or 4?
Prime time, bitch.
And the whole like
which by the way, Frank Darabont was one of the writers on 3 as well.
Oh, was it really?
And the other guy, I'm blanking on his name, who also wrote the screenplay. They did The Blob. The director directed The Blob with Frank Darabont wrote the screenplay for that one. And The Blob is I think an unsung, incredible horror film from the 80s that people always forget about, and like that one also left a mark on me as a kid. But but this whole series, Nightmare gets like, so Nightmare 4 and 5. I rewatched just last night, and I mean, they say that because what's his name, who directed 4, we referenced, Rennie Harlan directed 4, and that was like his big breakout one. It's so fun. Like it's not scary, but it's like it truly looks like MTV music video sets that are like nightmares, right? Like nightmares with blood and guts and gore. And then 5 is even more so. Like he didn't direct 5, but it's almost like they said, wow, that was such a hit, 4, because I think 4 was huge. and they were like, let's just do that again, kind of. And
it's funny you mentioned the MTV thing because that's exactly what they're like. They're like giant video set pieces. Like
which one of the things I love about these films is that they're like, this is before The Ring, this is before Seven, when they just take the color out and it's monochrome.
Right.
They're bright and gorgeous, like the cinematography, but then they also like layered it with like this disgusting, grittiness.
Right.
So it's like this the photography, the effects, like I think the Nightmare on Elm Street is truly like the whole series is like art. You watch it, it's like, it's undeniably like they're playing with something Buñuel or Dali would be like, or fucking around with about dreams and reality. Like these are truly like artistic films. Now that I'm older, that are not
the
scary.
Cockroach scene in it.
Hold on,
Four.
you guys.
I just
as I thought.
my wife
Danielle Kazmariak over on Facebook's like what was her big question was how do you think these slasher movies would translate today? And she was talking about her son viewing them, and just kind of same thing as with your daughter. It's sort of, you get to a certain level that it's from today's filmmaking standpoint, when you watch some of this stuff, it has that's the thing. Like if you watch it with a lot of like classic cinema, and this is I would consider it classic at this point, and we're fucking going back almost 40 years, it's you can't view it from the same eye as you view the Avengers.
Yeah, well, no. So like so Jeff, let me ask your daughter. So she like was laughing at these, but did she enjoy them? Did she like find them interesting? Or?
I think she did. I mean, like I said, she really liked Halloween in 13th. I think she did enjoy it. I think she enjoyed it for the novelty more than anything else. Johnny Depp. I showed her Evil Dead 2 and we were done with it. She goes, "What did I just watch?"
Yeah. I mean, that's a hard one. You're like, is that Three Stooges?
But he has a pretty good appreciation for him, even though they get a little like, we watched Halloween 4 together, to prepare for this podcast. And, and I was like, I got to watch Halloween 5. And he's like, yeah.
I get it. All right, so we're pretty much almost out of time here. So I'm gonna
let me say.
Let me just show. I'm just gonna show one more trailer because we were saying about 4 and 5. I just want to show you guys just see how gorgeous these films became. We're gonna watch this trailer, then we'll do a wrap out.
Do you know what terror is?
Hello.
Do you live here?
Nobody lives here.
Real terror. How long has it been since you've been on Elm Street? Welcome to a brand new nightmare. He is the first in fear.
Will you help me? I'm sorry, someone help me, please!
Second to none.
Don't let them put you to sleep.
He has no mercy. And no equal. Now no one sleeps. Get ready. This August, your wildest dreams will come true.
How sweet, fresh meat.
A Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 4. The Dream Master.
How sweet, fresh meat. He had the best one-liners, though, man.
I know, he did.
So, yeah, let's do our little wrap out here. Although I do like the idea of how do kids interpret this. Like, we should do a podcast where we just leave and we just let, like, your sons and daughters take over.
My son is
That'd be
9.
funny.
My son is 9.
Be awesome.
He's afraid of his own shadow, so he won't, like, even as he gets older, I know he won't watch it.
We'll make him watch it.
I showed him Army of Darkness, and he was he loved it, but he was a little afraid of that. So I don't think horror is in his future just yet.
I remember when my son, I showed him Evil Dead 2 when he was like 8 or 9, and he loved it.
Yeah.
However,
he ran away for 2 weeks.
The same age, like 9 or 10, I tried to show him American Werewolf in London. Ooh. And there was that scene where Griffin Dunn visits.
All tore up.
His face, and he's all ripped up, and he's eating the toast. Yeah. He started crying.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I'll shut this off.
Good parenting. Good
so you don't know what's gonna hit them.
Yeah. I had my older brothers who would watch this stuff and make me watch it, so there was no not watching it. So, but
okay. So really quick, one last thing I want to say about the end of this golden era of slasher films is it kind of ended not only with these last couple of Elm Street ones, but and the last couple of those Halloween ones, but also what I think kind of birthed out of sort of this was Child's Play, and Chucky became a new type of slasher. That birthed the postmodern era of slasher films. Yeah, and we'll talk about that in a different cast. But
so what year was Child's Play?
1988 or 89.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So
it was that
Nightmare 5 was at 89. So you're right. Child's Play was right, and I even said that was straddling the golden age.
Yeah, it's straddling.
And then a new Nightmare would come out. Like Freddy's. There was like another one.
And you get Halloween H2O.
Yeah, that's what
you know. Yeah. So we'll get into those movies on another one.
That'll be the next
postmodern Scream. The 90s,
next slasher one.
Halloween 6 even. That's some and where Friday the 13th really started.
And when we do that one, we're gonna read. What we'll do is we'll read the best of the FMKs for these three gentlemen here.
These guys are so go hit us up at Screen Radar on Twitter, and I don't know if do you have a handle on Facebook? Screen Radar on Facebook.
It's a Screen Radar, yeah. Although it's I noticed today. I think
YouTube.
It's actually the Screen Radar, which I have to fix actually.
Is it? Okay, well, you can find us at Screen
there's
Radar,
at Screen Radar on Facebook. Twitter and Facebook as well. I'm hold on, don't I have mine? Oh yeah, here's mine. Here's at Luconian Logic on Twitter if you want to find me. Hit me up, friend me.
I forget my Twitter handle. It's like
Nick Berg. So just look up this dude right here.
Bunch of numbers. Yeah, just Nick Berg. Go to at Screen Radar on Twitter.
I think Twitter I'm Jeff P. Heller. I think.
Oh, do I follow you? That's going to be embarrassing if no, I think I follow you.
I don't. I'm so inactive on Twitter.
I follow you guys, but I don't pay attention to you.
Well, we're gonna. You're beneath me.
Anyways,
All right. So any last words?
No, man. Just go back and watch some of these films. Like some of them are good, some of them are bad, but they're all a lot of fun.
And there are literally dozens and dozens that came out in the 80s.
Yeah, there's so many more that came out in the 80s. Like, I mean, God, we could talk about all of the other 80s slasher films as a whole nother cast. It's ridiculous, but these were the big ones in the 80s. These are ones worth covering. Other ones, I liked Pieces. I like, a bunch of other ridiculous ones, but these are it. So we'll check you out. Yeah, hit us up on that FMK. So we'll shout out those on the next horror.
Yeah, we'll read some on the next one.
Oh, I believe next Thursday we're going to be going live again, and we will review the new Bill and Ted movie and do another episode of our time travel series.
That's right.
And talk about the Bill and Ted trilogy, because that's probably the third biggest and only other real big time travel franchise we can really think of. Heller, you might be able to think of other ones, but
I'm all over this.
No, we're gonna do it. We're gonna do it.
I'm excited.
We're gonna do a time travel romance one. Remember?
Yeah, we'll get into that.
Which I'm excited about because was it Somewhere in Time or
we'll slide into your doors.
There's a couple of good ones.
Slide into your DMs. All right, guys.
All right, see you guys.
Good night.
Bye.
Hey, wait.